Should I go into that a little bit?
Yes, I think it's important because I think that's where, especially when you're showing people homes, and now when homes, the benefit of buying a house that's been on the market a little bit longer, they're typically things that need to be done to the house. And so that comes up a lot with people, and what can I do, and how long is it going to take, and what is the process like? And it's very important to have somebody who is very familiar with a permitting office and how that works, because that really streamlines the process, because I have heard horror stories with people who've gotten outside contractors to come in who thought they could do something and they couldn't.
Right. Yeah. So it's very dependent as to which jurisdiction you're in. So Anne Arundel County, even though we're not, a huge state government or federal government, it's very much a bureaucratic government office.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Chino with Anchored Annapolis, and today I'm here with Matt Gettier. Hi, Matt.
Hi.
Matt is with Treehouse Properties, and I met Matt 2 years ago, a year ago?
Probably.
2 years ago?
2 years ago.
So I was introduced to him, someone that I work with, and Matt did exquisite work in DC, but he's an Anne Arundel County native local, and he has then expanded his business in Anne Arundel County. So today I wanted to pick his brain on all things construction and especially permits, excuse me, because I know in Anne Arundel County, Annapolis, the historic district, and Eastport, they can all be a little bit different. So we're going to start with that and then sort of expand. But why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Matt Gettier. I own Treehouse Properties. Treehouse has been in existence for a year now. Prior to Treehouse, I was the general manager of a small boutique developer in DC for about 10 years. So we've done everything from, gut remodels, just redoing kitchens and baths, all the way up to brand new homes, 6,000 square foot new homes in DC. So kind of do the entire range. So as you said, born and raised here in Annapolis, and I live here with my wife and 2 daughters, and just needed to be closer to home. So that's why I'm focusing kind of on Anne Arundel County and Annapolis at this point.
So you're very familiar with permits, and I wanted to sort of start with that because it's a hot topic on the difference, because I know depending on where you're looking, because my main job is in real estate, so I deal with this a lot and have worked with Matt a lot on this, is sort of explaining the differences, because there are differences depending on where you are with regards to permits, permitting process, and then any exceptions, et cetera. So let's talk about that first.
Yeah. So here in Annapolis, you have City of Annapolis.
Okay. Which is where we are now. So there's the city limits. And then you also have Annapolis zip code, which is outside of city limits. Okay, is that just 21401, or does that encompass 21403?
I don't know.
Okay.
I know it's 21401 because that's where I live.
Okay.
So I live in 21401. It's Annapolis, but it's not city limits.
Okay.
So when I built an addition on my house, I had to deal with Anne Arundel County, not City of Annapolis.
All right.
Even though I have an Annapolis address, because I'm not within the city limits, I was Anne Arundel County. So it can get confusing.
Yes.
So it's, and the process for both are very different.
Okay.
So should I go into that a little bit?
Yes, I think it's important, because I think that's where, especially when you're showing people homes, and now when homes, the benefit of buying a house that's been on the market a little bit longer, they're typically things that need to be done to the house. And so that comes up a lot with people, and what can I do, and how long is it going to take, and what is the process like? And it's very important to have somebody who is very familiar with a permitting office and how that works, because that really streamlines the process, because I have heard horror stories with people who've gotten outside contractors to come in who thought they could do something and they couldn't.
Right. Yeah. So it's very dependent as to which jurisdiction you're in. So Anne Arundel County, even though we're not, a huge state government or federal government, it's very much a bureaucratic government office. There's a number of employees. They have a set process that they go through. They check the boxes. You'll have different people look at your permit request. You'll have different people look at zoning, and then you get comments and you address those comments. It's a defined process with a lot of steps.
Okay.
Takes a while, but it's a defined process.
Okay. And how long is that process typically from applying to permit to getting the permits? And I'm not going to put that into because construction projects are all different.
They're all very different. It depends on what you want to do. If you're doing an interior only renovation, you can apply and get a permit pretty quickly within, probably a month or so. There are additional permits that you need rather than just your building permit. So you're going to need your building permit first, and then you're going to need electrical permit. You're going to need plumbing. You're going to need mechanical if you're just doing inside. If you go outside and you start to add on space, there are additional things that need to be looked at. Grading, environmental, health department. If you are adding space, health department will be drawn in to make sure that your septic, if you're on septic, has the capacity to deal with extra space and extra people. So as the project gets bigger, the permitting process gets more involved. For example, I have been working with some clients in Anne Arundel County, down off Generals Highway. They are going to build a very large addition. They have been in permitting for about 8 months.
Okay.
But there is, very technical grading issues that need to be looked at. Moving septic tank. When you start getting into those things, the process becomes very long because there's a whole bunch of different organizations that need to look at that permit before it's sent on to the next step.
Okay.
So.
And then I know Eastport's another separate entity. I'm going to say entity because they have certain setback restrictions and everything. That is a little bit different than historic downtown Annapolis.
Yeah.
Do you still deal with historic when you're dealing with Eastport, or is that a separate division?
So both Eastport and historic downtown come under the jurisdiction of the City of Annapolis.
Okay.
So you use City of Annapolis permitting, planning, and zoning for all of those permits. Historic district is kind of its own beast. There is a large book about the historic district. So people tend to get really scared about historic district.
Yes, they do.
But I almost like historic district better because there's a large book that line
Definitive?
by line. It's very defined, and it says this is what you need to do. These are the shingles. These are the windows. Now it's a pain because you have to find that material.
Okay.
And there are only a couple different options available to you. So I just did a project actually on Market Street that they were requiring historic windows on the back of the house, and there's only one window manufacturer that historic approves. And that window manufacturer, the line that's approved is only one line with that one window manufacturer. Okay. So it's complicated and it's a pain and it takes some time, but it is defined.
Okay.
Eastport, on the other hand, so you don't have that book that defines everything that's required. Okay. So things need to be looked at individually. In DC, it's called an ANC. I forget the name in Eastport, but it is basically a group of people within Eastport that look at your proposed plans. Okay. If you're doing an exterior addition, if you're doing a large addition, that group of people can make suggestions, and then you go back and forth with them. Okay. And with permitting to figure out what you are in fact allowed to do.
Oh, okay.
So it's a longer, harder process, in my opinion.
Okay.
In Eastport, just because you don't have that defined.
So is it more subjective?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. But technically more is allowed.
Okay.
So like you can use really any window you want. It's just that the neighborhood committee is going to be able to say like, no, we don't want this like ultra modern
Okay.
Structure here. Like we want to retain the identity of the neighborhood. We want the neighborhood to look a specific way. So there's a lot of back and forth in that initial process in Eastport.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because whenever I show in Eastport or downtown Annapolis, that becomes a topic of conversation because it is something to really take into consideration. If you don't love the house the way it is, it's kind of the same thing with waterfront.
Right.
If you don't love the view, don't buy it because the chances of you're
not taking down trees.
No, the chances of you expanding that view or making it any different are slim to none.
Right.
But it is interesting because I do hear all the time, oh, we got a variance for this and a variance for that. And that's, typically on the waterfront side. So sometimes it does seem a little bit subjective with the county and depending on, what you can do. So it's just interesting all around to see, what that looks like.
And it really does come down to the old saying, like, with enough time and money, anything is possible. Right. So, I mean,
except the view.
Except the view. Well, I mean,
okay.
I've seen some crazy things happen.
All right.
So if people are willing to pay very hefty fines, there's even more that's possible.
Okay.
I don't do it, but I have seen that happen. So, yeah.
That's funny. Okay.
Yeah. Like I've seen people cut down trees.
I've seen it too.
Not supposed to.
Freshly cut and you're showing it and they're freshly cut trees and it's a really large tree and there's no way that was
that was and they're just like, this is going to cost me $50,000, so we'll do it.
All right.
Hey.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the new legislation that has come through. They're trying to make it easier for ADUs to be possible, and I think that's great, especially with the housing shortage that we have.
Absolutely.
Do you have any, and we won't go into the legislation of it all, but I know you've built ADUs in the past. And if someone's thinking, oh, that might be a good solution for me to look into, do you have some recommendations for sort of a first steps or things that you've experienced when building an ADU? Yeah,
I mean, first step definitely is find an architect that is familiar with Annapolis.
Okay.
That, to me, is the most important part of the entire process. I've seen a number of people who have, pulled plans off the internet, for example, and then tried to take those plans through the city to get approved. And the amount of money that you're saving on those plans on the internet, you are going to spend time in revisions, and then probably ultimately having to hire a draftsman or an architect to change those plans.
Okay.
So my biggest piece of advice to people when they're looking at doing anything, especially ADUs, is finding an architect who's very familiar with the jurisdiction that you are building in, because they know all of the codes, they know what's important, they know what has been approved and what has been denied recently, because things change very quickly. So that would be my number one piece of advice. Second is, with adding the ADU, you need to make sure that your sewage and water is accounted for, because that is something that is that kind of rears its ugly head on a lot of ADUs. So if you're on septic and well, if you're on septic and well or public, because if you're on public, you have to figure out where that sewage is going.
Okay.
Like, are you taking that sewage directly to an underground line that's in your yard?
Okay.
Sometimes that's not possible.
Right.
So sometimes you have to bring it into your house.
Okay.
And then out. You also have to think about the level, so your grade. So in some situations with ADU, you can rely on gravity.
Okay.
A lot of situations with ADUs, especially if they're in another part of the yard that has never been built on, the gravity isn't going to work just because of when they initially brought the sewer into that house, they looked at the house.
Oh, okay.
So if you're in a lower part of the yard, which a lot of yards do tend to fall off the back, if you're in the back, then you cannot rely on that gravity because you're lower than your main sewage line.
Okay.
So that's something that you really have to consider with ADUs. But ADUs are cool.
They are.
I love building ADUs. I built a number of them in DC. So they're really cool projects. I love building ADUs.
Well, I'm excited to see sort of how that transpires because I think it's been a really hot topic, especially with people wanting to do the short-term rentals, which I think is sort of thinning out. But I think the spirit of the bill is to have some additional housing options for people.
Yeah, long-term rentals.
Yep.
Yeah,
and I think that's great.
Yep.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about is when someone is it's not their forever home. Mm-hmm. So they want to live there. They want it to be comfortable. But they want a good return on investment. And I know right now in the current market where we are, people will pay over asking and they will compete on things that are completely move-in ready, turnkey. Mm-hmm. The things that need to be updated, those things sit on a little bit longer. What do you find from the financial perspective is the biggest return on investment improvements that people can make?
That's
okay.
So if you walk into a house and it has 3 really ugly bathrooms, with like your old, beige,
yes,
one-piece showers,
or pink toilets, or blue tile.
Yes, that is a major objection.
Yes,
and you can redo a bathroom pretty quickly and absolutely get your money back on that project.
Okay.
So bathrooms, kitchens, you can go overboard.
Yes,
with kitchens.
You can.
So kitchens, you can definitely get your money back on a kitchen project, but you have to put guardrails on it.
Okay.
Because it's very, very easy to spend too much on a kitchen project and not get your money back.
Yes.
So you want to bring it to a level that is appealing, but you don't want to build that gourmet kitchen.
Right. Yes.
So, and then just simple things. Carpet. Carpet's so cheap. And you don't even have to put in nice carpet.
Right. That's true.
You can put in really kind of like builder grade carpet, and that looks and shows so much better than 15-year-old, 20-year-old, worn down pile carpet.
Yes.
Right. So people walk in and look at that and say, "Ugh, like this looks dirty."
Yes.
Doing carpet's so quick, so cheap.
Okay.
People get their money back like tenfold with carpet. Painting is another thing.
It's huge.
Huge.
I can't tell you how many times people say, "Oh, remember that pink house or that blue?" That they literally named the house by one of the just very aggressive colors that were in that. They never forget it. That's one of the easiest things.
Paint everything designer white.
Yeah. And anything neutral.
Paint it neutral. And, I painted my house right before my 4-year-old was born, which was a terrible idea because now I have handprints and dirt smudges everywhere. But like you go into a house and you see that.
Yes.
It's like the first thing you see.
Yes.
It's like, oof, like this house is dirty.
Yes.
And it's actually not dirty. It's just worn paint.
Yes.
This active 4-year-old throwing things around, right? Coloring, right. But paint is more expensive than most people think.
Yes, it is.
So people are always shocked at what repainting costs, but you definitely will get your money back on it.
The other thing that I run into over the past year or so is roofs. So a lot of times insurance companies will not insure a house if the roof is, it depends on the insurance company, but typically over 15 years, they don't want to insure the property. So we've run into that a lot. So, and I think sometimes people assume that roofs are more expensive necessarily, and not everything's more expensive now.
Right.
But it's much better to do that ahead of time if your roof is older than 15 years than it is to get to the point where you have somebody who you're under contract and the buyer just can't get insurance. Yeah. I've seen insurance issues pop up on a number of homes where you think that the house is good and the sale is going to complete. And then all of a sudden the insurance company for the prospective buyer is like, nope, can't insure it. So yeah, there's a number of things, roofs, trees too close. Number of things. The other thing that I wanted to go over is you were telling me about for the City of Annapolis, going back to City of Annapolis, when you're doing a remodel or anything interior, there's a new, is it a rule, a law?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things that have popped up in the past couple remodels that I've completed. If you're disturbing or your limit of disturbance on the interior of the house is more than 50%.
Okay.
The city is requiring sprinklers. So if you are doing a full gut remodel of a home in City of Annapolis, the city will want you to put a sprinkler system in.
Okay.
Sprinkler systems, depending on size and type, range anywhere from $20,000 to $70,000. So it's a large investment.
Okay.
So I have seen a number of my clients who have done projects staged in different periods of time.
Okay.
So they've done 30% here.
Oh.
Finished it.
Got it. Okay.
And then done 30% here. Finished it. Because you're not taking the walls and sealing down on 50% of the house.
Okay.
You can just continue. What that does not do is smoke detector requirements in the City of Annapolis. I think that there are also new smoke detector requirements in Anne Arundel County, but there's a specific inspector in City of Annapolis who it is his issue.
Okay.
And that's another thing to consider with City of Annapolis is in the county, your inspectors, you'll have 5 or 6 inspectors for each area. So 5 electrical inspectors, 5 plumbing inspectors, 5 framing inspectors. So there's a little bit of, if you have a question, you can kind of go to another inspector, or another inspector could even come out. In City of Annapolis, there's one inspector per trade. So there's 1 electrical inspector.
Okay.
There is 1 mechanical inspector. There are, I believe, currently 2 building inspectors.
Okay.
So when an inspector, a specific inspector, has an issue that's near and dear to their heart, they're on it.
Okay.
Okay. So smoke detectors, they have to be interconnected.
Okay.
Now, they have to be interconnected if you're doing renovations to the house, and if you want to rent.
Okay.
They definitely have to be interconnected. The issue with that is there used to be a brand of smoke detector, Gettier, that made an interconnected smoke detector that you could plug into AC power, had a 10-year sealed battery, and was wirelessly interconnected.
Okay.
So those were the 3 requirements. Gettier discontinued that smoke detector. They had an issue with UL listing. So it's been discontinued. So now there's literally not a single product on the market that does the 3 things that are required. So to interconnect smoke detectors now, you have to physically run a line, an electrical line between each one. You have to physically connect each location, which requires more drywall coming off, patching, etc. Good news is that they say they're coming out with a new one that does this, but it won't be out until 26. Okay. So right now, there is a smoke detector issue in Annapolis if you're doing a remodel. So just something to consider.
Okay.
Yep.
And if someone, sort of to wrap this up, if someone's thinking about starting a project, or what's the first place to go to reach out to you to sort of talk them through the process?
So it depends on the size of the project.
Okay.
If you are doing interior remodeling, a general contractor such as myself can walk you through that process. And a general contractor that has experience with Annapolis and with Anne Arundel County can accelerate that process a little bit. If you're doing a larger project, if you're adding on, if you're building an ADU, I would absolutely always involve an architect that has experience in the jurisdiction that you're doing the project in.
Okay.
To me, that is one of the most important steps in any project. It's making sure that your architect is very familiar with planning and zoning in your jurisdiction. That's probably biggest piece of advice. Second piece of advice is don't try to sneak things past planning and zoning. I've seen so many instances where especially homeowners and some general contractors have said, oh, they probably won't figure this out. This is what they do every day.
Right.
There's so many people trying to sneak things past them. They're really good at sniffing that out.
Okay.
When you get caught on that, it delays your project by months.
Okay.
And so do it right up front.
Okay.
Get more permits than you need.
All right.
Just do it right. That will actually save you time and money in the long run.
Okay. That's good advice.
Can't fight City Hall.
Yeah.
Especially in Annapolis.
Okay.
So in Anne Arundel County, if you have a problem or if you don't.
Oh, you're fine. You're popular.
Yeah.
It's somebody who needs an ADU.
Probably. I thought I had that on silent. My bad. Yeah. So in Anne Arundel County, if you get feedback from planning and zoning or an inspector that you don't like, I've seen people succeed in arguing their point.
Okay.
If you go in and you say like, hey, this is what code says, this is my interpretation, this is why I think this is okay, I have seen that work. City of Annapolis, less so. So City of Annapolis, a lot of times, if you are told something by planning and zoning or an inspector, it is really, really hard to get them to change their mind.
Okay.
Again, with enough time and money, anything is possible, but it is much harder in City of Annapolis than it is with Anne Arundel County.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are my big pieces of advice.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have a link to some of the recommended architects that Matt will have in the description. We'll have a link to Matt and all of his contact information. So if you have any questions, please reach out to him. We hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah.
And we'll see you again. Thank you.